This is the car park of the Redbeck Motel, located on the outskirts of Wakefield in Yorkshire, England. And this is the start of today's story. A dry, sunny Sunday morning in Yorkshire in April is a rare thing, one which is guaranteed to bring out a range of fantastic classic cars. This is where I meet up with members of the Unofficial Yorkshire Classic Cars Facebook group and the starting point for today's adventure. This is an annual event, a drive to raise money for a well-known children's charity. This is Drive It Day, and you're watching Mark on Motoring. Welcome back to Drive It Day here on Mark on Motoring, where I'm covering the Drive It Day event and the convoy from the Redbeck Motel in Wakefield over to Knavesmire in York, where we'll be meeting up with members of the York Historic Vehicle Group. As always, aboard my trusty 1997 Megane Coupe, where I'm following the convoy through Featherstone and Pontefract towards the dual carriageway before making our way up towards York. The MGA was a radical departure from the old TF that it replaced all the way back in 1955. The car actually stayed in production until 1962, when it was replaced with the long-running MGB series of cars. Note also the absence of door handles on these roadster versions. Based on the Reliant Regal, the Bond Bug of 1970 to 74 still looks every bit as striking today as it ever did. Replacing the 3-litre V6 Essex engine in 1982 was the 2.8 injection, breathing a new lease of life into the Mark III Ford Capri. As we cross over into North Yorkshire, we're heading out towards Tadcaster, where we pick up the A64 dual carriageway to York. Check out this first generation FA Honda City Turbo 2, which was available with its own Motor Compo 50cc folding scooter, which fit neatly in the boot. Another small Japanese car in this convoy is this first generation Suzuki Alto FX, a very late one, and in this case equipped with a 2-speed automatic transmission. It was also nice to see a few cars return from last year's Drive It Day convoy, such as this Morris Minor and this gorgeous MGB GT, which to this day is still probably one of the nicest examples I've seen. Welcome to Drive It Day 2024. Drive It Day is a national event, it's run annually and it brings out thousands of classic cars on the road. What I love about this event is you get such a wide selection of cars. Obviously there's things like this fantastic Stag that we can see here behind us, and obviously classic cars. It just brings people together. So much like last year, I've joined a convoy with the Unofficial Yorkshire Classic Cars group from the Redbeck Cafe over in Wakefield, and now we're actually over at Knavesmire near York Racecourse, where we're meeting up with a larger convoy. They'll be heading off to various places. I know a lot of people will be heading to Sherburn Aero Club. Unfortunately, like last year, the field has been waterlogged, so I think some of us may be going off to an alternative venue. Obviously, we've got this group of people here behind me who've all come over from Wakefield. Morning, Andrew.
Morning.
So Andrew's one of our admins at the Unofficial Yorkshire Classic Car Group. And Andrew, you brought another car, haven't you, today?
Yes,
a
I
different
have, yes,
car.
yes.
So what have you bought?
It's a Suzuki Alto FX.
Right.
1984.
Yeah.
32,000 miles.
Right.
From new. Owned by a lady for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then a chap for 40 years that never used it.
Yeah.
No, for 20 years.
It looks absolutely immaculate, doesn't it?
It is. It's all genuine. Never been sprayed. All the interior is original.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Excellent.
Love it.
Yeah, and obviously this is one of two sort of 80s Japanese cars, because as you can see behind me, we've actually got this fabulous little Honda as well, which I have actually featured that car briefly on the channel at a show a few years ago. I am actually hoping to cover that vehicle in more detail at some point, because that actually came with a motorcycle that went in the boot, so really interesting. But if older classics are more your thing, well, it's not just 80s cars, things like this Ford Prefect, Ford Capri, obviously a Mark III, but really nice example. Actually owned by someone who does actually have a Mark I Capri as well. That particular one is also a 2.8 injection, which I must admit, when that car did pass me, it does sound quite nice. Bond bug, who doesn't love a Bond bug? Again, would like to quite like to feature that in more detail at some point. Lovely NGA that actually again has come with us from Wakefield this morning, and then there's some other cars that we've actually picked up. These older MGs. I actually picked this car up sort of on the way in, just as I were arriving in York. Absolutely stunning, isn't it? Also followed in this rather nice Mark II Triumph Vitesse. I really do like the Heralds and the Vitesse. Obviously the Vitesse is the one that's got the larger 6-cylinder engine as well. Yeah, actually Rover Joe's got a Vitesse. At some point I might have to see if I can get in there, maybe have a go with that when he gets it on the road. Sunbeam Alpine, I think this is possibly the one I featured over in Bridlington last year at a show. Again, beautiful car, and if it's the one I'm thinking of, lots of history with that vehicle as well. So yep, Alan's the proud owner of this lovely MG Roadster. This one has actually had a V8 conversion, hasn't it?
It is, yes. It was rebuilt in the mid-80s, and MG could have built this way back in the 70s, but of course it would have been a direct competitor for the TRs and for the Healy 3000s.
Yeah.
And MG said that the soft top body would never be strong enough to actually hold a V8 engine.
Okay.
And of course it was a load of rubbish. There's the V8 in it. We've had it for some years now, and it's absolutely lovely to drive.
Yeah.
And still does 28 to the gallon, which is
pretty impressive, actually.
It is for Yorkshire people, aye.
So all the factory V8s were GTs then?
Yes, because as I say, they would have been a direct competitor. It was all British Leyland,
yep.
And all shock horror. They would not have liked that. So yes, so this just goes to show that you can drop a V8 engine in them, and they're lovely to drive.
Excellent, that's great.
So there it is.
Well, it's nice to see it out today, Alan. So enjoy Drive It Day.
Yes, yes. I hope to take the route down a bit later, but it's a bit chilly at the moment.
Yeah. Excellent. Right, well, you have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, if you did want a convertible MG sports car that was a factory V8, you buy one like the one behind me here, owned by Lee. So, Lee, this is an MGR V8, isn't it, from the 90s?
That's right, yes, absolutely spot on. This particular car was made in 1995. It's one of the last 100 or so that came out. There were only 1,986 of them made. So, I think there's most of them, about 1,500, went to Japan.
Yeah.
But there's lots of them coming back to the UK now because of various rules and things in Japan about ownership and roadworthiness.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So, and of course, the roads in Japan were unsalted. So
Yeah.
compared to the British roads, which we all know are salted to death in the winter,
Yeah.
there's quite a good survival rate.
Yeah.
Plus the fact the bodies were galvanised when they were
Okay.
new, so they had much better anti-corrosion treatment than the standard MG fare back in the 60s, 70s and 80s.
Yeah. I do obviously remember these being advertised in the 90s, but from what I remember, I don't think they were around all that long, were they? And then the MGFs came out.
You're absolutely right. The RV8 was bought out as a stopgap.
Yeah.
I think in essence, in '89 when Mazda bought out the MX-5, MG Rover realised they needed to get a car on the road quickly.
Yeah.
So British Motor Heritage had started making the V8, the shells for rebodying MGs.
Okay.
And they bought a quantity of those, and they were changed, but in essence it was a standard MG underpinnings up there underneath.
Ah, right, okay, excellent.
So
Yeah.
but there's a lot of difference, you know. There's a lot of components which are totally different to your standard MGB.
Okay.
It's a 3.9 litre V8 which came from the Range Rover.
Right.
And it's a bit of a parts bin of other bits and pieces from other
Yeah.
Leyland products, if you like.
Yeah. Well, as you say, obviously being a stopgap as well, it will have been whatever they could have pulled together, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the budget, it was called Project Adder, the actual budget to devise and get the RV8 on the road was absolutely tiny. They were all hand built as well.
Okay.
At Canley, so they were very expensive. I think they were about £26,000.
Yeah, which in the mid-90s were quite a lot of money.
Yeah, I think in today's money it's about 65,000.
Mm.
So they were expensive cars.
Yeah.
For what people perceive to be an old MG.
Yeah.
In some respects.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, it's lovely to see it out today.
No problem,
and,
thank you.
Yeah, smashing, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Of course, no surprise, we have got some French cars here as well, which will always catch my attention. Lovely Citroen AK. Just look at this, you could spend hours, couldn't you, looking at all the stuff on here. Well, everyone's starting cars and going. I'm parked right down the other end, so it looks like I better get my skates on. Apparently, last minute change of plan, we are now going to the Aero Club as originally planned, so I'll see you in Sherburn in helmet. Following a Le Mans style dash, I was in the car and back on track. I was fortunate enough to be behind this Bond Keep. Now the Bond was built over in Preston, based on a Triumph Herald. I've actually featured this car in a previous video over at the Walton Classic Car Show last year, where I was lucky enough to be able to have a sit in the car as well. Now most of us probably do prefer a twisty B road to a dual carriageway, but it did give me an opportunity to get back in front of the pack. I was also able to obviously capture some footage of these vehicles en route, but the aim really was to try and get over to Sherburn before the pack so I could capture some of the vehicles arriving. Once on the A64 I did catch up to that Vitesse that we saw earlier in the video, and this MG T-Series. These little cars actually American GIs fell in love with during the war, and it kicked off this whole love of British sports cars in America. The Drive It Day convoy draws ever nearer to Sherburn Aero Club, passes by the Motorist, another popular motoring destination. Eagle-eyed among you may spot a Mazda badge on this roadster, possibly MX-5 based. I must admit initially I thought it may have even been a 2CV derived kit car due to that long overhang which could have housed an air-cooled engine. Is that an MG Magnet ZA designed by Gerald Palmer? Could easily be mistaken for the Wolseley O'Reilly Pathfinder designed by the same man. Of course, you all know who designed the Mini. That of course would be Sir Alec Izagonis. This is another car that did vex me a little bit. I believe it could be a Toyota based kit, possibly based on an MR2. Of course, if you do know, please let me know in the comments. I would be quite interested to know more about this car. So the seemingly endless convoy of cars keep piling into Sherburn Aero Club. Once on site they are of course met by the team from the York Historic Vehicle Group who are marshalling. That is the group who have organised this particular Drive It Day event. Here's a familiar sight, the Mazda 323F owned by Hillary, who I interviewed last year at Sowerby Hall Classic Car Show. This is probably the cleanest Mazda 323F you're ever likely to see. JBA Motors of Norwich, named after founders Mr Jones, Barlow and Ashley, produced cars like this Falcon. Now the Falcon was produced through the 80s and into the 90s, and I believe it actually was based on Ford Sierra running gear, so who knows, perhaps a 2-litre Pinto engine hides under there somewhere. Throughout the decade the Falcon did evolve through a number of different versions, and there was also the JBA Javelin, which I understand was actually based around the Ford Capri. Perhaps one of the better known long-standing traditional style British sports cars though would be cars like the Morgan. A number of years ago I actually took the factory tour down at Morgan, and it was truly fascinating watching craftsmen form this body over an ash frame. The cars from this Drive It Day convoy keep flooding into sight. I've been quite fortunate really, considering that much of the site was waterlogged earlier in the week. That between some of the drier grass area and the hard standing, the marshals have done a fantastic job of finding enough space to accommodate everyone. So here we have a Ford Anglia, but it's perhaps not the model of Ford Anglia that you're most familiar with. This is the Anglia that you would have bought in the late 1940s, early 50s. Yeah, got a little spec sheet here, so 933cc engine with 23.5 horsepower, 0 to 50 miles per hour in 30 seconds. The owner's actually had this car only a few months, and he said he has been told that it will do 60 miles per hour, but in reality says 30 mile an hour is sort of the sweet spot where this car is most comfortable. Also quite interestingly, we've got this book here, and this particular car on the cover in the background is actually this car, same registration and everything, so quite fascinating. And yeah, so there's a bit of history with this one. Well, I always find getting into pre-war designs of cars quite interesting. That said, this is probably one of the easier older cars I've managed to get in. So I've got quite a bit of room below this steering wheel. Windscreen is actually surprisingly high, so yeah, bottom of the windscreen is sort of up to chin level for me, so yeah, that is quite a surprise actually. Very simple dashboard, just got this single gauge here with the speedometer. We have got a few gauges down here, but I think they're later accessories. Manual gearbox. Yeah, really quite a simple car, but then many cars really were in those days. It is quite a narrow body, this car, but space in the footwell isn't bad, and obviously there's very little in the way of transmission tunnel, so even though it's quite a narrow body, it's surprisingly spacious in here. Headroom, well, you could probably wear a top hat in this car, there's so much room. Seats are really springy, quite well padded. Obviously backrests are quite low, but again, very typical of the time. Quite like that actually. We've got this wooden trim piece capping this door here, which seems to form a bit of a pull handle, which is interesting. Again, doors are quite thin, not really anything in the way of an armrest. We do have wind down windows as well, which again, for the time, if you think about early minis and things like that, that had sliding windows, so wind down windows must have been quite a modern feature of the time. The Triumph TR7 and the MGB both started out life as 4-cylinder cars, though did eventually get V8 power right at the very end of the production run. This Jensen Healey though is perhaps a far rarer beast, with around 10,000 cars actually produced, though many went to the US, so only around 2,000 models actually stayed in the UK. I can't imagine there'll be very many of those left. Nestled amongst these cars from the 1950s and 60s, released in the 1970s, is this 1982-83 Mark I Volkswagen Golf. Despite now being over 4 decades old, it does actually look positively modern when put aside some of these early post-war and pre-war designs. Love them or loathe them, unfortunately the poor Triumph Stag did gain a bit of a reputation for reliability. However, the low-down grumble of that V8 and Italian styling by Michelotti has assured its place as a true classic. From one V8 GT car to another, here we have the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. A very similar looking body shell to the earlier DBS, but now with some real power from its 5.3 litre V8 engine. Very similar to that used in the Lagonda models, but with modified camshafts and a few other items swapped out to make this what is often hailed as Britain's first supercar. It was actually capable of cracking 170 miles per hour. 0 to 60 came up in a shade over 5 seconds, making it actually quicker than a Ferrari Daytona. Now, sadly, you should have been seeing a piece to camera here of me with the car, but for whatever reason, I seem to have lost that footage. Also, some of my other footage was overexposed, so but I didn't want to deprive you of it, so I've tried my best to make good on what we've actually got here. this local event has been hosted by York Historic Vehicle Group. I will be leaving some links in the video description to those, also to the unofficial Yorkshire Classic Cars, and also I've got my Drive It Day plate this year. I actually bought one with the proceeds of that going to charity, so again I'm going to leave some links in the video as well, so do check those out later. Yeah, again, fantastic selection of cars here. 1970 Volkswagen Beetle 1300, apparently unrestored, and it's been in the same family from new. We've certainly no shortage of classic saloon cars as well. Rover P5B, I absolutely adore these cars. Never tire of looking at these things. Something I've probably not seen so many of those cars like this Zephyr. Yeah, actually, to think back in its day, this must have been a really big car, because it certainly doesn't look small even by modern day standards. Sometimes it really does pay to come off the beaten track a bit and have a look at what's outside the main parking of some of these events. Rover 3 litre P5, I always like these cars. Obviously you get the later P5Bs which have the V8, but this is the earlier car. There was actually a P5B in the parking inside, and there was also a lovely P4 as well, but again I have featured both of those models numerous times in the past. But yeah, it's a lovely looking thing, isn't it? So we've had another fantastic Drive It Day. The weather has actually held off today as well, which has been fantastic, especially considering how wet it has been of late. Nice as well, I've had the opportunity to get a photo of the Megane in front of the Boeing Stearman, so that's been a nice novelty as well. Obviously, if you're interested in participating in Drive It Day next year, obviously it's a national event, so there will be a group somewhere in your area, whichever part of the UK you're in, where you can go and join an event very much like this one. If you are in Yorkshire though and you want to join this one, well, again, check out the York Historic Vehicle Group. I'd also recommend checking out the Yorkshire Unofficial Classic Cars Facebook group, because they put on dates of all the events as well. I will be leaving links to both of those in the video description. Again, I'll leave a link in there. You can get the Drive It Day plates, which are obviously raising money for Child Line, so a very worthy cause. I'm currently in the process of booking up some more events and obviously arranging to do some car reviews as well, so make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of those in the very near future. I'm going to put a link up here to subscribe to the channel and a couple of videos as well, so by all means check some of those out. If you've enjoyed the video today, do give us a thumbs up, and as always I do enjoy reading your comments. Thank you very much again for watching, and I will catch you on the next video very soon. It's goodbye from me.